Dr. Brasic, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you so very much for joining me today.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to meet you.
So we're going to do a little bit of talking, just a little bit about your background and dive a bit deeper into your specific area of expertise today. So if you don't mind, Dr. Brasic, please tell us about your professional beginnings and what led you to pursue this particular career.
I can remember when I was in high school, I was fascinated by a book about psychoanalysis about Freud, and that led to my desire to become a psychiatrist. When I was in medical school at Boston University, Norman Geschwind, the head of neurology, emphasized the association between parts of the brain and movements in the body or sensations. And he suggested that parts of the brain may be associated with behavior and emotion. I thought, well, gee, I need to know neurology also. So I did go ahead to study neurology and psychiatry, and because of the desire to understand myself and others and to help young people as well as older people, people of all ages with nervous and mental problems. I had the good fortune to work with Dr. David Schaffer at the New York State Psychiatric Institute, who taught me about developing rating scales. I worked with Dr. Gerald Young at Bellevue Hospital, Grossman School of Medicine at NYU to learn about developing work with developmental disabilities. And I've had the pleasure of being trained by Dr. Dean Wong at Hopkins about doing brain imaging to develop understanding of how chemicals in the brain can be affected in nervous and mental problems, and how to find those problems with the goal to diagnose, treat, cure, and eventually prevent them. So with Dr. Wong, I have participated in the development of pharmaceuticals that treat particular conditions, as well as pharmaceuticals that are radioactive compounds to identify the types of abnormalities in the brain with the goal of removing those and relieving the symptoms that they may cause.
You just started to tell us about some of your recent work. Can you go into it a little bit farther? Just the recent work you've been doing utilizing pharmaceuticals.
Right. Well, in particular, I've had the good fortune to work on the development of some compounds for Alzheimer's disease. So Alzheimer's disease and related conditions are characterized by memory loss. There are a number of chemical compounds, proteins, that accumulate in the people with this disorder. So I have had the good fortune to work with teams that have developed tools to identify the accumulation of these abnormal proteins in the brain. One of them is called amyloid, and I have worked on the development of a couple of radiotracers, florbetapir and flumetamol, that are now commercially available for these purposes. So they are administered to people who may have Alzheimer's disease or related disorder, and they help to identify whether or not the protein has accumulated, and that may confirm the diagnosis. It also may be useful for treatment procedures, and because there are some treatments under development to remove that abnormal protein from the brain. Also, most recently and currently, we're working on the development of another protein, tau, in the brain of people with Alzheimer's disease, and developing radiotracers to identify that. I've also worked with the development of some drugs for schizophrenia using positron emission tomography, in particular lumateperone and lucidarone. These are commonly now commercially available drugs that help people with schizophrenia and other mental disorders. And I'm fortunate to have taken part in the basic science that developed the optimal dose for these disorders.
I'm particularly interested, obviously, in everything that has to do with heart disease and cardiovascular disease as a heart disease survivor. And so your research and these investigations that you're playing a part in will indeed help to save lives. Dr. Brasic, what do you think is your greatest strength as a researcher, and what sets you apart from others in their field?
Yeah, I can say that I really enjoy what I do. So even though I face setbacks continually, I've had more rejections than acceptances this year, I have received some success. And, in fact, I'm particularly honored to be recognized by Marquis Who's Who. I have benefited, and I have received recognition for the work that I'm doing. I have studies that are being published. We're going to be making other presentations. I've enjoyed working with my patients, and I'm grateful to them. I'm grateful to the administration, Dr. Paul Rothman, my dean, Dr. Karen Hortman, my chair, Dr. Martin Pomper, my division chief, for facilitating my continued research career at Hopkins. I'm grateful to the students with whom I am working. And fortunately, I've had the benefit of recruiting a number of wonderful, outstanding students, including Akanksha Suresh, who is an undergraduate who's developed a technique to classify the output of instrumentation of people with Parkinson's disease. So she's doing her own project on that. I've worked with Alvina Batul Sayed, who continues to work with me on many projects. She was a visiting medical student last year, has published some articles with me, and she is now a physician practicing in Pakistan, continuing to do research. And I'm working with Arman Jamal, an undergraduate who is now back home in Kenya, Africa, and he's continuing to do research in a remote way to learn the tools and to develop his own techniques. So I'm really gratified that I have the opportunity. I enjoy what I'm doing. I'm looking forward to making more advances that will really help the people with whom I work. And I'm eager to train others, students, in order to develop their own techniques so that they will advance the understanding of the brain and the progress to diagnose, treat, cure, and eventually prevent the neurologic and psychiatric disorders that we are studying.
You have just so beautifully laid out the professionals that you work with. But I have to imagine that you've had some tremendous family support. So what role has your family played in your success?
I'd say that my family has been absolutely instrumental in my success. So, I'm the first college graduate in my family. My grandparents were immigrants. Both of my parents, though, encouraged the development of skills and have really fostered my development along my way. So I am indebted to them for instilling in me the desire to continue despite adversity, despite setbacks. And I think these are necessary aspects of a successful researcher.
You have outlined quite a legacy of your work. So I have to ask you what advice you have for people looking to become involved in academia or medical research.
Right. Well, I would say that there is the great opportunity to really enjoy what one does. And in some ways it may be surprising, but by studying particular disorders, I find that there are advances that can be made. And it is really very interesting to look at the minor issues that may need to be answered in studies. And by looking at tiny things, one can make advances that do lead to major discoveries. So it's something that is exciting and something that I enjoy doing. I would say that patience and perseverance and optimism are really required in order to persevere in a research career in science. I am fortunate to have got some recognition, including from Marquis Who's Who, and I really recognize that what I've done is worthwhile.
And sir, finally, I'd like to ask you, what is the one thing you would like the viewers of this time that you and I've spent together to walk away with?
I would like the viewers to walk away with the knowledge that there will be major advances in the future, that we're on the verge of breakthroughs in the areas in which we're studying, and that one can hope that conditions that have been thought to be fatal in the past will actually be cured.
Dr. Brasic, thank you so very much for just some enlightening information on your research and what's next in the area of neuroscience. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. The pleasure is mine.